Hello and welcome to the Sewing Studio. Today I'm going to show you how to make these last minute Christmas decorations. So I've made these little Christmas trees and the stem is a cinnamon stick. So they smell lovely and Christmassy too. And these are perfect for last minute decorations for you to make with the children. They are really, really simple. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So you need some scraps of Christmassy fabric. Let's just slide those up there. And I just cut out a triangle on a piece of paper. So I popped my triangle on the reverse of my fabric. So I'm going to put right sides together, put my triangle onto it, put a couple of pins in and cut it out. And then I'm going to cut it out. It doesn't have to be exact to the edge of the paper. It's just to give you a rough idea so you get a triangular shape. So then we're going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to join those right sides together. And I'm going to leave a gap at the bottom here for turning through. So I've got 1/4 inch a foot on my machine, but it doesn't matter if it's not exactly 1/4, as long as the seam's the same all the way around. It can be less than 1/4. So I'm going to leave a gap at the bottom. So I'm going to start just past the centre and I'm just going to do a reverse stitch. And that helps when you come to turn it through, so your stitching doesn't pull out. And go backwards and forwards. So I've done a locking stitch there. I've gone a bit wibbly over here, but that doesn't really matter as long as it's a rough triangular shape. So I'm going back to the other table now and I'm going to trim off my corners and turn it through. So I'm just going to cut off the corners, being very careful not to cut into my stitch line. And I'm just going to trim there where I went a bit wobbly. I'm just going to trim some of that bulk away so that it makes it nice and neat when I turn it through. So now I'm going to turn it through. I'm going to use I've got a pair of tweezers somewhere. I'm going to use the end of these tweezers because they're great for helping you to turn things through the right way, because it's a little bit fiddly. And also these are good for pushing out the points, but you just have to be careful that you don't push your points through your stitching. They work a bit better than a pencil or a pair of scissors because they generally don't go through. Right, so that's our tree shape, and what I would do is I would give that a good press so it's a nice shape before you start stuffing. So I did mean to mention earlier, if you've got directional fabric like this one here, you need to make sure that your baubles on the fabric are going in the same direction, so you haven't got upside down baubles. And then you would take some toy stuffing and you would stuff your tree using toy stuffing so that it looks like this. The next thing you're going to need is your cinnamon stick. And so you start to sew just tiny stitches. I've got it caught around the point of the tree now. Right, so you start to sew just tiny stitches like this in the same thread as your fabric, and then you take your cinnamon stick and you push it inside the tree. And what I do is I work out where I want it to go in the middle, and I do a couple of stitches, and when I get close to the cinnamon stick I do a knot stitch just to make it a little bit stronger. And then to come out on the other side, I just take my needle and do tiny little tacking stitches around so that I can then come out on the other side and do a knot stitch again. Hang on. So go through a couple of times so it holds it nice and tight. So I've knotted it, and then I'm just going to sew to the end. Keeping all that toy stuffing inside. It smells really nice, by the way. This lovely cinnamony smell gets you in the mood for Christmas. And then when I fasten it off, I push the thread back through inside, and then I come out further up the tree and then snip that off so you've got no thread showing. The next thing you're going to need is a piece of ribbon. And what I did, so I'd need to change my thread now to red. And what I did was I made a loop like this and just snipped the ribbon so it was at an angle, and then secured it with a button. So I would change my thread, I would come through here like this and pop a button on, or a bell, as I've done here. This one's got a bell on, and then I've got different buttons. One other idea, if you wanted to sew buttons, so I've got these little star shapes here, if you wanted to sew them on to decorate your tree, the time to do it would be when you've got your tree made. You could decorate it with buttons. So this would be the time to sew them on, and then put the stuffing in afterwards. It's much harder to sew buttons on when it's stuffed, but if you do it while it's like this, you'd be able to decorate your tree if that's what you wanted to do. So there's little red ones which could be berries, or there's red stars or gold stars. So as always, have fun, enjoy the smell of the cinnamon, make them your own, and I look forward to seeing you next time here in the sewing studio.